Good afternoon, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Beirut, Lebanon on May 26, 2024. I arrived in Beirut yesterday on a flight from Athens, and this is my fourth visit to Lebanon since the beginning of 2023. My first visit, and in fact the first visit of my lifetime to Lebanon, took place in March of last year. And of course this was before the extraordinary violence erupted in Gaza in October. And my primary purpose in coming here at that time was simply to familiarize myself with the country, but particularly to explore the impacts of the devastating economic crisis into which the country was plunged several years ago. In the course of that trip, I did manage to visit for the first time the Shatila Palestinian refugee camp, and I saw the very difficult conditions in which thousands of Palestinian refugees have been obliged to spend their lives in Shatila. I also went to the southern border. I saw the separation wall which the Israeli authorities had constructed, some of it on Lebanese land. And in addition, I saw various watchtowers and other military outposts, as well as the northern settlements, including Kiryat Shimona, that are very close to the Lebanon border on the Israeli side. Then in October, about 1 week after the violence erupted in Gaza, I came to Lebanon again for the third time, this time with the specific purpose of understanding, to the extent that I could, what role Hezbollah was having in the unfolding conflict in the occupied Palestinian territories. And on that trip, accompanied by two Canadian journalists of Lebanese descent who acted as my guides, I went to the southern border. I saw areas where there had been extensive damage. I did see some active combat in the way of explosions, artillery fire, and drones circling overhead. But at that point in time, the combat was rather limited relative to where we are today. Then I came back in March, not specifically to Lebanon, but as part of a broader trip across West Asia, and that would be March of this year. And that trip included several days in Qatar, where I attended a major weapons exhibition as the genocide was unfolding in Gaza. And then I went to Jordan, spent several days in Amman, then crossed into occupied Palestine, the West Bank specifically, over the Allenby Bridge by land, and spent about 10 days in Palestine, particularly in the West Bank, but I also visited the border areas of Gaza, the settlements that had been attacked by Palestinian militants on the Israeli side of the border with Gaza, and I also went to Eilat to see what impacts the Ansar Allah attacks on shipping in the Red Sea were having on this major port facility of Israel. And I also rounded out that trip by visiting Baghdad for the first time and speaking to members of the resistance there. Finally, I came back this time because by all indications, the fighting is escalating, perhaps to an extent that many of us had hoped we would be able to avoid. And this seems to be inevitable at this stage, a major conflagration, for one simple reason, and that is that Israel's Western backers appear to have absolutely no interest in reining it in. They have not done anything meaningful to enforce three judgments now of the International Court of Justice, including a decision by a margin of 13-2 on Friday of last week, ordering Israel to halt its Rafah offensive. Israel undertook that offensive despite the fact that there were well over 1 million displaced persons sheltering there. They were extremely vulnerable, in a very weak condition, terrorized, many of them wounded, many of them starving. And Israel's allies at least purported to warn the leadership of Israel over and over again not to embark upon an offensive in Rafah, and it did so nonetheless. And then within hours of the ICJ's decision coming out on Friday, in which it unequivocally ordered Israel to halt the Rafah offensive, Israel mercilessly bombed parts of Rafah. In addition, there is the action, albeit belated action, of the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, a British prosecutor who was promoted heavily by the British government in 2021 when he was elected to that position, and this would have been the neoconservative government of Boris Johnson. The British press reported that he was elated by the fact that Karim Khan had been elected to be chief prosecutor of the ICC. For inexplicable reasons, Karim Khan waited 7 months to act, 4 months after the ICJ rendered its initial decision on January 26 of this year, finding it to be plausible that Israel was committing genocide. And even when he finally acted several days ago by announcing that he was going to seek arrest warrants. He limited his arrest warrants to 2 members of the Israeli cabinet, the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister. He did not even go after the most extreme ministers, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, whose language has been openly genocidal throughout this 7 months of genocide. And in addition, he limited his charges to the period after October 7th and to the Gaza Strip, meaning that the settlements in the West Bank were off the table, at least at this point in the proceedings. And so too, evidently, is the question of apartheid. And most notably, he did not charge Israel with genocide, even though, or I should say Israel's defense minister and prime minister with genocide, even though the ICJ had found it plausible that Israel was committing genocide 4 months ago. So as a result of all of this, there has been, by all accounts, a considerable intensification of the hostilities on the southern border. I follow closely both the Israeli press and the statements being put out by the resistance groups, Hezbollah, of course, but also Hamas, the Iraqi militias that are opposed to Israel, Ansar Allah, and so forth. And by all appearances, both the frequency and the precision and the destructive effect of the attacks coming in from both sides, from Hezbollah and from the Israeli military, are increasing. And so I plan to go down to the southern border in the days ahead. I'll get as close to the hot zone as I can, see if I can speak to people who are living through this ongoing nightmare, perhaps speak to representatives of the resistance movements here, and find out where this all appears to be heading. And in fact, yesterday, after I got off the plane, I went to Nabatea, which is a city of about 100,000 people, reputed to be a Hezbollah stronghold, about 20 kilometers from the border with Israel, because May 25th is the anniversary of the end of the Israeli occupation of South Lebanon. That was brought to an end after 18 years in 2000 by the resistance forces in South Lebanon. And there was a festival being held in Nabatea to commemorate this occasion. I did go there, and unfortunately, when I attended or attempted to attend the festival, along with a guide, I was stopped and questioned for about 45 minutes by 2 persons who my guide tells me were Hezbollah internal security. And although they were perfectly civil and professional and they were non-threatening, at the end of the day, out of an abundance of caution, they decided not to allow me to videograph or interview people within the festival. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to generate a report for you from Nabatea yesterday. But this time, when I return to the southern areas of Lebanon, I hope to have better luck. And in any event, I'll keep you apprised of the progress of my journey across the south of the country. For now, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Beirut, Lebanon on May 26, 2024.